For 19 years, my life was simple. Build a future for my daughter Sophia. Sacrifice everything so she could have opportunities I never did. And when that thick envelope arrived from Princeton, it felt like the culmination. Like every late night, every struggle, every dream deferred was finally worth it. My little girl going to the Ivy League. I was bursting with pride. I was ready to sign the papers, mortgage the house, give her the world. But then, just hours after we celebrated, I overheard her. And in 3 short sentences, standing outside a closed door, she shattered not just my heart, but the entire reality I thought we shared. She revealed a lie I'd been living for almost 2 decades. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't send that daughter to Princeton. The deal was off. I canceled her college. And that was just the beginning of me uncovering the truth. You know, looking back, maybe I should have seen the signs, the little things, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when I picked her up from school, the carefully curated friends who never seemed to look me in the eye, the excuses she'd make about why I couldn't volunteer for that school event. But when you're a single mother raising a child on your own, especially an adopted child who's already faced more than her fair share of instability, you make allowances. You tell yourself it's teenage stuff, growing pains. You bend, you compromise, you sacrifice. And Lord knows I sacrificed. 19 years of it. 19 years since I brought little Sophia home. She was 3, a tiny, wary thing with eyes that seemed too old for her face. My Thomas, he'd been gone a year by then, a car accident, just when we were finally ready to start the family we'd dreamed of. The adoption agency felt like a second chance, a way to fill the quiet house, to pour all that pent-up love into someone who needed it. And Sophia, she needed love, or so I told myself. I worked 2 jobs for a while, night shifts at the diner after my day job as a bookkeeper. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every extra dollar went towards tuition for the fancy private school her friends went to, towards ballet lessons she seemed to enjoy at first, towards clothes that would help her fit in, towards summer camps that promised enrichment. I wanted her to have everything I couldn't give her, everything she might have missed out on. I wanted her to feel chosen, loved, secure. And the goal, the big, shining goal that justified all the tired mornings and the lonely evenings, was college, a good college, a place where she could build a future, a life that was wide open with possibilities. We talked about it constantly, or rather, I talked about it, dreaming aloud. Sophia would nod, sometimes chime in with a specific school name she'd heard mentioned by her friends, usually one with a prestigious-sounding name. So when the thick envelope arrived from Princeton University, it felt like the culmination of everything. 19 years of scraped pennies, worn-out shoes, and dreams deferred, all distilled into that heavy piece of paper. I remember tracing my fingers over the embossed logo, Princeton, the Ivy League. It felt unreal, like something from a movie, not my modest little house on a quiet street. My hands were trembling slightly as I handed it to Sophia. She was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling on her phone. She took it from me without looking up, and for a second, my heart sank. Was she not excited? Didn't she understand what this meant? Then she saw the return address. Her scrolling stopped. Her eyes widened. She tore the envelope open. "I got in!" Her scream was piercing, a sudden burst of pure, unadulterated joy that filled the kitchen. She jumped up, dancing around the small space, the open letter clutched in her hand. "Mom, I got in! Princeton! Can you believe it?" I couldn't stop the tears. They streamed down my face, a mix of exhaustion, relief, and overwhelming pride. "Oh, sweetheart," I choked out, reaching for her, wanting to pull her into a hug. Your father would have been so proud," I whispered, picturing Thomas's face, remembering our shared hopes all those years ago. But Sophia had already pulled away, already texting furiously on her phone. "We have to celebrate, like a real party." She looked up, her eyes darting around the kitchen, assessing the space. I even hired a couple of college students to bartend, making sure they knew how to mix fancy cocktails. I wanted it to be perfect for her, so she wouldn't feel pathetic. I was in the kitchen, arranging little shrimp hors d'oeuvres on a platter, trying to look busy and approachable, when Sophia burst in with 3 friends from Lakeside Prep, all perfectly coiffed, dressed in expensive-looking clothes, radiating an air of effortless privilege that always made me feel a little rumpled and inadequate in my own home. "Mom, where are the little shrimp things?" she demanded, not even making eye contact, already looking past me, probably towards the party area. "Coming right up," I said, smiling warmly at her friends. I tried to engage them. "Congratulations to all of you on your acceptances. Where will you all be heading?" One of the girls, Lila, the one with kind eyes, actually bothered to meet my gaze and smiled. "Mrs. Sullivan, your home is lovely. Thank you. I'll be going to Yale." "Oh, God, Mom, don't start with the small talk," Sophia groaned, rolling her eyes theatrically. "Just bring the food out when it's ready." And with that, she swept her friends away, back into the throng of teenagers who filled my living room and backyard. I leaned against the counter after they left, the smile fading from my face. I took a deep, shaky breath, willing away the hurt. This wasn't about me. This was Sophia's night, her achievement, her celebration. I just needed to get through it. The party was in full swing downstairs. Laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. I needed more napkins, so I ventured upstairs to the linen closet. As I passed the guest bedroom, the door was slightly ajar, and I heard Sophia's distinct laugh. Curiosity, or maybe just a mother's natural inclination to listen in, made me pause. Then I heard her voice, clear and cutting. "Can you imagine having to explain her to my college friends?" I froze. My hand went to the doorknob, but I didn't open it. Another voice, one I recognized as Chloe Adams's, chimed in. Chloe, whose parents had rented out Bellinis. "At least your real mom was probably young and cool." "Was she a teen mom or something?" another girl asked, giggling. Sophia's voice was casual, dismissive. "I tell everyone my parents were brilliant grad students who died in an accident." My breath hitched. It's less embarrassing than admitting I was adopted by a desperate old woman who couldn't have kids of her own. The words were like shards of ice spreading through my veins, chilling me to my fingertips. Desperate old woman couldn't have kids of her own. This wasn't just teenage angst. This was something else, something cold. "But she's paying for Princeton, right?" the third voice asked. "That's pretty generous." Sophia snorted, a harsh, ugly sound. "She's mortgaging the house, like I'd let her off the hook after all the time she embarrassed me." Embarrassed her? What had I done to embarrass her? Other than existing? Other than not being the perfect, young, cool mom she apparently craved? "Do you know, last parent-teacher night she asked Mr. Phillips what existentialism meant in front of everyone," Sophia continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "It's not my fault she's too stupid to understand half the books I read." Laughter rippled through the room. "She's like having a housekeeper who thinks she's your mom," Sophia elaborated, "always hovering, asking about my day like she could possibly understand what my life is like." A wave of nausea washed over me. Housekeeper? Stupid? Hovering? Did she really see me that way? All these years? God, she sighed dramatically. "I can't wait to get to Princeton and finally drop the act." "What act?" Leela's voice, quiet and slightly hesitant, cut through the cruel laughter. "The Grateful Daughter act." Sophia's voice was venomous now. Do you know how exhausting it is pretending to care about her feelings? Oh, Mom, thank you so much for working double shift so I could go to ballet. She mimicked me cruelly, her voice high-pitched and saccharine, as if she didn't get exactly what she wanted, someone to make her pathetic life seem meaningful. Downstairs, a glass shattered, followed by cheers. My mind screamed at me, move, confront her, do something, something other than standing here, letting each word cut deeper and deeper into me. But I couldn't. My feet felt rooted to the floor. "But you'll still visit her, right?" Leela pressed, her voice still quiet, maybe a little uneasy now. "Only until I get my inheritance," Sophia laughed. Another chilling sound. "The old lady's not going to live forever, and when she kicks it, this house is mine. Then I'll finally be free. Free? From me? From the life I had built for her, around her?" I backed away silently, retreating down the hallway towards my own bedroom. I didn't get the napkins. I didn't go back downstairs. I closed my bedroom quietly, leaning my back against it, trying to breathe past the crushing weight in my chest. I caught my reflection in the mirror across the room. Gray-streaked hair I hadn't bothered to color in months, lines around my eyes etched by years of worry and too little sleep. The dress I'd splurged on for tonight, hoping to look presentable for her. For the first time, I saw myself through Sophia's eyes. Old, unsophisticated, embarrassing, a obstacle. The sounds of celebration continued downstairs, loud, joyful, oblivious. But inside me, something vital had cracked. The foundation I'd built my entire adult life upon, the love I thought we shared, the sacrifices I thought had meaning, the daughter I thought I knew. It was all a lie, a performance, and I had no idea what to do next. My world had just imploded. The morning after felt like waking up in the wreckage of a storm I hadn't seen coming. The house was silent, littered with the casualties of the party: crumpled napkins, sticky spills, abandoned plastic cups, and a few forlorn balloons clinging to the ceiling. Sophia was still asleep upstairs, no doubt recovering from her triumphant performance. Every champagne flute I washed, every crumpled napkin I collected, felt like evidence of my own breathtaking naivety. How could I have been so blind, so willingly deluded? Had I really been that desperate for a child's love that I created a fantasy and lived inside it for 2 decades? "Mom, is there coffee?" Sophia shuffled into the kitchen around noon, hair tangled, eyes puffy from too little sleep and maybe too much sparkling cider. She looked like any other teenager after a party, except she wasn't just any other teenager. I poured her a cup without speaking. My voice felt thick, unused. "Great party, right?" She scrolled through her phone, a small smile on her face. "Chloe's mom asked where we catered from." She took a sip of coffee. "I told her it was the new place downtown, not that cheap deli you actually used." The casual lie, tossed out so effortlessly, struck me differently now. It wasn't just about protecting her image. It was part of the performance, a small, unnecessary deception. How many others had there been? How many little lies, big lies, manipulations had I missed? "Sophia," I said quietly. My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, steady and calm in a way that didn't match the turmoil inside. "We need to talk." "Can't. Meeting Leela for brunch in an hour." She glanced up, finally noticing my expression. Her brows furrowed. "What's wrong with you? You look weird." "I overheard your conversation with your friends last night." The change was instantaneous. Her face shifted from annoyance to calculation in a heartbeat. Her eyes narrowed slightly, her posture stiffened.
"What conversation?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "The one in the guest room. The one where you called me old and stupid. Where you said I was like a housekeeper. Where you talked about waiting for me to die so you could get your inheritance." Sophia's laugh was too bright, too brittle, too rehearsed, a performance she'd perfected over years. "Mom, come on. We were just joking around. You know how girls are. We say crazy things just to sound cool." "Do you tell people your real parents were brilliant grad students who died?" I pressed, my voice still low but firm. Her smile faltered. She looked away. "I can't believe you were eavesdropping on me at my own celebration party." "Answer the question, Sophia." She slammed her coffee cup down on the counter, a sudden burst of real anger replacing the practiced deflection. "What does it matter? You know how people look at me when they realize I'm adopted. All that fake sympathy and those questions about my real family. It's easier to make something up, something that doesn't include me." She grabbed her phone, visibly agitated. "You're being ridiculous. I don't have time for this. I need to get ready." As she turned to leave, I said, "We need to discuss Princeton." She stopped, her hand on the doorknob. "What's there to discuss? We already decided I'm going." "No," I corrected. "You decided, and I agreed to mortgage the house to make it happen." Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. "But now what? You're threatening to not pay for college because your feelings are hurt? Grow up, Mom." I flinched as if she'd struck me. Grow up. In 19 years, through all the teenage drama and defiance, I'd never heard such naked contempt in her voice. It wasn't just words. It was a complete dismissal of me, my feelings, my existence. "This isn't about hurt feelings," I said, finding my voice again, stronger now, fueled by a new kind of resolve. "This is about realizing I don't know who you are." "I'm the same person I've always been," she said, crossing her arms defensively. "You're just finally paying attention." That admission hung between us, raw and damning in its honesty. She hadn't changed. I had just finally seen her. Truly seen her. "What happened to you?" I whispered, the question escaping before I could stop it. "Nothing happened to me," she spat, the mask completely off now. "Maybe this is who I've always been, and you were too desperate for someone to love you to notice." The cruelty was so calculated, so precise, it took my breath away. I knew instantly she'd bought these words before, practiced them. They were aimed with deadly accuracy at my deepest insecurity. "Go to your brunch," I said, my voice eerily calm now. The shock had given way to a cold, hard clarity. "We'll continue this conversation when you get back." "There's nothing to continue." She grabbed her purse, slinging it over her shoulder. "Just get over it and go back to planning how you'll redecorate my room when I leave for Princeton." She slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent house. I sank onto a kitchen chair, the events of the last few hours replaying in my mind. Desperate old woman, housekeeper, waiting for me to die. In the quiet of our home, I tried to reconcile the daughter I thought I knew, the one I'd loved and nurtured and sacrificed for, with the stranger who had just walked out, leaving behind only contempt and wreckage. It felt impossible. I pulled out my phone. There was only one person I could think of who might help me make sense of this, who might offer some perspective outside the suffocating bubble of my own denial. "Brenda?" I said when she answered. Her voice sounded cautious. "It's Eleanor. I need to talk to you about Sophia." My oldest friend hesitated for a moment. Then her voice softened, tinged with something I couldn't quite place until later. "I've been waiting for this call for years, Elle." Years? What did she mean, years? "Remember when Sophia was 16? Brenda's voice crackled through the phone, and she told you I couldn't make your birthday dinner because I was sick. A knot began to form in my stomach. Yes, I replied. I remembered feeling bad that Brenda couldn't make it. I wasn't sick, Elle. She called me that morning and said you wanted to keep it just family because you were feeling sensitive about turning 55. My grip tightened on the phone. But I specifically asked her to invite you. I told her I wanted you there. I know, Brenda said gently. That's not all. She continued, her voice steady, recounting incidents that painted a chillingly consistent picture. Remember when you couldn't attend my sister's funeral because Sophia had that panic attack before her theater performance? Of course, I'd felt terrible leaving Brenda alone that day, but Sophia had been hysterical, hyperventilating. There was no way I could leave her. Elle, Brenda said, her voice firm but kind. I'm so sorry to tell you this, but I saw her backstage 15 minutes after you called to cancel. She was laughing with her castmates, like nothing had happened. The room seemed to tilt around me. That's not possible, I whispered. She was hyperventilating. She was terrified. I'm sorry, but it's true. I have more examples if you need them. I didn't need more. The knot in my stomach was a hard, cold stone now. But I listened anyway, numbly, as Brenda detailed years of carefully orchestrated manipulation. Sophia sabotaging my friendship with Carol from book club, telling Carol I thought her taste was trashy. Sophia telling a date, a kind man named Richard, that I'd described him as financially unstable, something I'd never even thought, let alone said aloud. Sophia losing birthday gifts from friends, and then Brenda had later discovered selling them online. Why didn't you tell me? I finally asked, my voice hoarse. Brenda sighed. I tried, Elle, so many times, subtly, carefully, but you always had an explanation, a justification. Oh, Sophia's just sensitive. She's just under a lot of pressure. She didn't mean it like that. After a while, it seemed kinder to let you believe what you needed to believe. After hanging up, I sat motionless at the kitchen table, surrounded by the silent evidence of yesterday's lie. The catering containers. The crumpled napkins. The echoes of Sophia's cruel laughter upstairs. Everything Brenda had told me, everything I had overheard, everything I was starting to piece together, it formed a picture of a person I didn't recognize, a person who had been living under my roof, manipulating my love for years. Then, with a sudden, fierce determination that felt like a foreign country inside me, I climbed the stairs to Sophia's room. I'd never invaded her privacy before, never opened her drawers, never looked through her things. It felt wrong, a violation of the boundaries I'd always respected. But after everything I'd learned, the boundaries she had shattered, I needed to know. All of it. I opened drawers, checked under the mattress, rifled through her desk. Nothing overtly suspicious. Then, in the back of her closet, tucked away in a shoebox, I found it. Jewelry. My mother's pearl earrings. The delicate silver bracelet Thomas had given me on our 5th anniversary. Even the sapphire pendant I'd inherited from my grandmother, the one that had supposedly been stolen during a break-in 3 years ago. Stolen by whom? The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Under her bed, I found a small, leather-bound journal. It had a tiny lock. My blood ran cold. Her keychain was on her desk, left behind in her rush to leave. The key was on it. My hands trembled as I picked it up, knowing I was crossing a line, a fundamental boundary of trust. But the trust, I realized, had been broken long before I picked up that key. I opened the journal. The first entry was dated about 3 years ago. Another day of playing the perfect daughter. Sometimes I think I deserve an Oscar for this performance. Em bought me that stupid laptop for getting straight A's, as if I would accept anything less than top of the line. Told her it would help with college applications, and watched her practically empty her savings account. So predictable. So predictable. I flipped forward, each page more damning than the last. Em thinks I'm at SAT prep on Thursdays, actually going to Liam's house. His parents are never home and he always has good stuff. If Em ever found out I was drinking, she'd probably cry for days. So pathetic. Went with the Adamses to look at Yale. God, I wish they were my parents. So easy, so much money. Chloe's mom barely knows she exists, but writes checks for everything. Em hovers like a damn hummingbird. The most recent entry, dated just a few weeks ago, made my blood run cold. Met with Dr. Kim about Em's cognitive decline. He wouldn't commit to anything without seeing her, but gave me information about power of attorney. Once I'm 21, if I can document enough concerning behaviors, I could potentially manage her finances. 2 more years of playing the devoted daughter, then the house is as good as mine. She'll never know what hit her. I closed the journal, feeling physically ill. This wasn't teenage rebellion. It wasn't normal growing pains or typical defiance. This was calculated, long-term deception, a predatory plan. She wasn't just embarrassed by me, she was actively plotting against me. My own daughter. My phone pinged. A notification from my banking app. A $500 charge at Nordstrom. I hadn't been to Nordstrom. I checked my wallet. My credit card was still there. But I remembered Sophia asking to borrow it last week, to buy textbooks online, she'd said, because her account was acting up. With shaking hands, I logged into my account. Months of unexplained charges unfolded before my eyes. High-end restaurants, clothing stores I'd never heard of, rideshare services to addresses I didn't recognize. Thousands of dollars. I opened her laptop, which was on her desk, password protected, of course, but I knew her patterns. Birthdays, pet names, school names. I typed in Princeton 2025. It granted immediate access. Her email confirmed everything else. Correspondence with Princeton about an exclusive summer program in Oxford she'd never mentioned. Messages to friends mocking my career, my education, my appearance. A draft letter to her high school counselor explaining why she was rejecting a full scholarship to State University in favor of Princeton. A full scholarship she'd never told me about. The sound of the front door opening downstairs jolted me back to reality. Sophia was home. I quickly returned everything to its place, the jewelry back in the shoebox, the journal under the bed. My hands were still shaking, but a strange calm was settling over me. The fear and pain were still there, a dull ache beneath the surface, but they were overshadowed by a cold, clear resolve. I knew what I had to do.
I made my way downstairs, meeting Sophia in the kitchen. She was already scrolling through her phone, a little backpack slung over one shoulder. "Leela says hi," she said without looking up. "Did you have a nice time?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, steady and calm in a way that didn't match the turmoil inside. "It was fine," she shrugged. "Look, about earlier." She finally looked up, a flicker of something, maybe uncertainty, maybe just annoyance at having to address my overreaction, crossing her face. "I've been thinking." I interrupted her. "You're right." Suspicion flashed across her face, quickly replaced by satisfaction. "Good, I knew you'd see reason. We should start making plans for Princeton. There's so much to do before September." Relief washed over her features. She thought she'd won, just like always. The storm had passed, and everything would return to normal. My normal. My role as the enabling, predictable mother. But as I smiled and nodded while she chattered about dorm decorations, laundry lists, and freshman orientation, I made a silent vow. This would be the last time Sophia Sullivan manipulated me. The game was about to change, and she had no idea. The law office of Jenkins and Associates occupied the 10th floor of a modest building downtown. It felt solid, grounded.
Arthur Jenkins, Art, had been my late husband's friend and our family attorney for 20 years. He greeted me with a warm handshake, his kind face creased with concern. "Eleanor," he said, guiding me to his office, "it's been too long. When you called, you mentioned some unexpected news." I settled into the comfortable leather chair across from his desk. "Yes, Art, it's about Thomas's investment in that tech startup, Neurosync." Art nodded, recognition crossing his features. "Ah, yes, the one you always called his lottery ticket. He was so convinced it would take off." "That's the one," I smiled faintly, a genuine smile this time, remembering Thomas's enthusiasm. He was so excited about their neurointerface technology, even though everyone said it was too speculative. I remember trying to talk him out of it. "I remember," Art admitted, a rueful smile touching his lips. "Not my finest moment as a financial advisor." "Well," I said, taking a deep breath, "I got a call yesterday. Neurosync has been acquired by Mindframe Industries." I slid the paperwork I'd brought across his desk. Apparently, Thomas's lottery ticket just paid off. Big time. Art's eyes widened as he reviewed the documents. He looked up at me, stunned. "Eleanor, this is substantial. This changes everything." $560,000, I said. The number still felt surreal to me. "After taxes. After taxes, this changes everything for you," Art finished, emphasizing the last word. "It does," I agreed, "but not in the way you might think." I spent the next hour explaining the situation with Sophia, the overheard conversation, Brenda's revelations, the evidence I'd found, the jewelry, the bank statements, the journal. Art listened without interruption, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "I understand your distress, Eleanor," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "This is a lot to process." "It is," I confirmed. "But what exactly am I planning to do? That's why I'm here. I need to know my options. What can I do?" Art folded his hands on his desk. "Legally, Eleanor, you have no obligation to pay for Sophia's education, especially now that she's 18. She's an adult." A weight, one I hadn't realized I was carrying, began to lift from my shoulders. "And the money from Neurosync?" "Is undeniably yours alone," he confirmed. "Thomas left no specific instructions regarding it, and you are his sole beneficiary. And the mortgage you are about to take out for Princeton? That can be canceled before anything is finalized." I nodded, relief washing over me. This was possible. "There's something else, Arthur," I continued, my voice hardening slightly. "I found evidence that Sophia was planning to seek power of attorney over me by documenting false cognitive decline to access my finances when she turned 21. Art's expression turned grim. "Eleanor, that's extremely concerning, potentially fraudulent, premeditated." "She also rejected a full scholarship to State University without telling me," I added, "which means she deliberately chose the option that would cost me the most. She manipulated you into a major financial burden, concealed more affordable alternatives, and planned to exploit your assets," Art concluded, summarizing the situation with a lawyer's precision. "Exactly," I said. "So, what do you want, Eleanor? Truly." The question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge? Punishment? To hurt her as much as she had hurt me? None of those felt right. Not ultimately. "I want her to learn," I said finally, the words forming slowly, deliberately. "The lesson I failed to teach her all these years, that actions have consequences, that relationships require honesty, that love doesn't mean being a doormat." Art nodded thoughtfully. "Then perhaps we should craft a strategy that's educational rather than purely punitive." For the next 2 hours, we outlined a plan. A strategy designed to teach Sophia the realities of adult responsibility, consequences, and financial independence, while also protecting myself. First, I would transfer the money from the NeuroSync payout into a separate account, one only I could access. It wouldn't be touched for Cranston. Second, I would cancel all credit cards Sophia used as an authorized user. No more unauthorized shopping sprees on my dime. Finally, with Art's guidance, I would establish a trust fund for Sophia. This isn't about withholding support entirely, Art clarified. It's about creating accountability. The funds will be there, but accessing them will depend on her demonstrating responsible behavior and financial independence. We can set specific conditions she'll need to meet. As I prepared to leave, a strange sense of lightness filled me. I had a plan, I had options, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking back control of my own life. Art handed me a university brochure as I stood up. One more thing to consider, Eleanor. I looked at it, the local community college. Arthur, I couldn't possibly. Why not? He smiled gently. You've put your dreams on hold for decades. Maybe it's time to revisit them. After all, you've always loved literature. Those journals you've kept all these years, Thomas used to tell me about them. He said they showed real talent. I was surprised he remembered my old habit of writing daily reflections and short stories. Thomas had always encouraged my writing, but after his accident, that dream had been set aside, pushed down beneath the urgent need to make ends meet and raise Sophia. Think about it, Arthur said. It's never too late to pursue your own education, your own path. When I arrived home, Sophia was waiting. A stack of Princeton housing forms lay on the kitchen table. "Where have you been?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "I needed your signature on these hours ago." I set my purse down carefully, deliberately. I had a meeting with Arthur Tankins. Her eyes narrowed. "The lawyer? Why?" "I received some unexpected news today," I said, walking past her to the refrigerator. "An investment your father made years ago has finally paid off." Sophia's eyes lit up with naked greed, a flicker of avarice that was almost frightening to behold. "How much?" "Enough to change our lives," I said, my voice even, watching her reaction closely. "But perhaps not in the way you're thinking." Her excitement faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've had a revelation today, Sophia, about you, about me, about the relationship we've built on my blind devotion and your calculated manipulation." She froze, the color draining slightly from her face. Then she quickly recovered, her posture stiffening into defiance. "Is this about what you overheard again? Mom, I told you we were just joking." "Stop lying," I said quietly, stepping closer to the table. "I know about the scholarship you rejected. I know about the Oxford program you applied to without telling me. I know about the credit card charges and the stolen jewelry." Her eyes flickered towards the back of the closet instinctively. "And I know about the journal where you detailed plans to declare me mentally incompetent." The color drained completely from her face. She stared at me, speechless for a moment. You went through my things?" Her voice was barely a whisper, unable to muster her usual indignation in the face of such overwhelming evidence. "You had no right." "Perhaps not," I acknowledged. "After finding your journal, your financial records on my cards, and listening to you openly plot against me, I had every reason." Silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truth. "So what now?" she demanded, defiance returning, though it felt thinner this time. "You're going to punish me by not paying for Princeton, ruin my future because I hurt your feelings?" "No," I said calmly, my voice unwavering. "I'm going to give you exactly what you need, not what you want." She stared at me, confusion on her face. What are you talking about?" "What you need, Sophia," I said, looking her directly in the eye, "is a lesson in consequences." The confusion on her face would have been comical under different circumstances. She looked genuinely bewildered. I don't understand. You will, I promised, starting to walk away. Starting tomorrow. As I climbed the stairs, leaving her standing by the table, staring after me in bewilderment, I realized something profound. This was the first conversation we'd ever had where I hadn't yielded. I hadn't backed down. I hadn't apologized for her feelings or excused her behavior. It felt like waking up from a very long sleep, a sleep where I had willingly chosen to live in a dream.
You're going back to school? Sophia's voice dripped with disbelief. It had been 3 days since our confrontation, 3 days of strategic silence on my part. I'd waited for her to bring it up, waited for the manipulation attempts. They'd come, of course. Tears, guilt trips, accusations. I'd met them all with a quiet, unwavering resolve. She was staring at the community college enrollment form lying on the kitchen counter next to my coffee cup. I continued making my coffee, refusing to take the bait of her incredulity. "Yes," I said, keeping my tone light, "I am." "For what?" she scoffed. "It's not like you can start a career at your age." I ignored the jab at my age. "I've always loved literature," I explained as I poured my coffee. "Now I have the time and resources to study it properly. Arthur was right. It's time I did something for myself." "This is about punishing me, isn't it?" She crossed her arms, a familiar defensive posture. "You're using Dad's money for yourself instead of my education." "I'm using my money," I corrected gently, "to improve my life, something I should have done years ago. You see, Sophia, your father's investment paying off wasn't a windfall for your college fund. It was financial security for my future, a future I intend to live fully." It had been 3 days since our confrontation, as I said, 3 days of strategic silence on my part, while Sophia cycled through the usual playbook: anger, manipulation, desperate attempts to reestablish the status quo. She'd even made dinner last night, a badly burnt lasagna that smelled vaguely of smoke and regret. I'd praised it effusively while watching her calculate her next move, my heart aching but my resolve firm. "What about Princeton?" she finally asked the question I'd been waiting for, the one that underscored everything. I took a sip of my coffee, bracing myself. "I won't be paying for Princeton." The explosion was immediate, louder and more dramatic than the one the other day, perhaps because she'd had 3 days to build up steam. "You can't do this to me. I've already accepted. My friends all know. Do you have any idea how humiliating it would be to attend State University on a full scholarship?" I interrupted, my voice calm, cutting through her tirade. "The one you rejected without telling me." Sophia faltered. That's different. Princeton opens doors that State never could." "Then perhaps you should have been honest about your options," I said, "and we could have discussed them like adults, like partners in this process, not parent and manipulator." "This is insane," she muttered, pacing the kitchen floor now. "You're punishing me for trying to better myself." "No," I said evenly. "I'm allowing you to experience the natural consequences of dishonesty, deception, and a disturbing lack of respect for the person supporting you. There's a difference." She stopped pacing, staring at me. "So, that's it? I just don't go to college?" Her voice cracked, and for a moment, just a flicker, I almost wavered. The thought of her not having the future I dreamed of for her, it was painful. "You have options," I said, pulling out a folder from my bag. Arthur had helped me prepare it. "I've contacted State University, explained the situation. They've agreed to reconsider your scholarship based on your academic record. You'll need to apply by the end of the week." Hope flickered in her eyes, quickly replaced by suspicion. "Why would you do that, if you're so angry with me?" "Because, despite everything," I said, looking at her, my heart aching with a complex mix of love and disappointment, "I am your mother, and I do want you to succeed. But success built on manipulation isn't really success at all, is it?" She didn't answer, staring at the folder as if it might bite her. "There's more," I continued. "I've established a trust fund for you."
Her head snapped up. Greed flashed in her eyes again before she could hide it. A trust fund with conditions, I clarified quickly. You'll receive a modest monthly stipend for living expenses while you attend college. Enough for rent, food, books, transportation. The bulk of the money will become available to you after you've maintained full-time employment for 2 years following graduation. 2 years, she spluttered. That's forever. It's called learning financial independence, I said. Something I should have taught you long ago. Responsibility, earning your own way. She paced the kitchen again, calculations visibly running behind her eyes, weighing the options. The small stipend now, the large lump sum later versus what? No college? Living at home with me? And if I refuse, she asked, stopping to face me, if I try to find another way to get to Princeton, or just don't go to college at all, then you're welcome to stay here, I said mildly, contribute to household expenses, and attend community college with me. The choice is entirely yours. She stared at me for a long moment. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I've had 19 years of making excuses for your behavior, I replied. It gives one plenty of time to reflect. She snatched the folder off the table. I need to think. Of course, I nodded. In the meantime, I've canceled all your credit cards and transferred your car insurance to your name. The bills are in the folder. You can't be serious. Completely serious, I said. Oh, and Sophia, the Princeton housing forms you needed me to sign? I nodded towards the shredder in the corner of the kitchen. A little red light blinked. I thought it best to eliminate the temptation. She stared at the shredder, then back at me. Her eyes blazed with anger and disbelief. You are unbelievable. She turned and stormed upstairs, the folder clutched in her hand. I heard her door slam. After she left, I sank into a chair, letting out a shaky breath. Was I being too harsh? Too abrupt in changing the rules of our relationship so drastically? Had I gone too far? My phone rang, displaying Brenda's name. How did it go? She asked, immediately hearing the tension in my voice. About as well as expected, I sighed. She thinks I'm punishing her, ruining her life. You're not, Brenda said firmly. You're finally parenting her, Ellie. There's a difference. You're setting boundaries. That's what responsible parents do. What if she hates me for it, forever? She might, for a while. But Ellie, she was planning to have you declared incompetent, to get your money, to take your house. If that doesn't justify some tough love, I don't know what does. You didn't abandon her. You just stopped letting her walk all over you. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Someone's at the door, Brenda. I'll call you back. Okay, Ellie, stay strong. I hung up and went to the front door. Standing there was Dr. Ethan Carter, my neighbor from 3 houses down. He was holding a stack of mail. Morning, Eleanor, he said with an apologetic smile. These were delivered to my box by mistake. I think the new carrier is still learning the route. Thank you, Ethan, I said, taking the mail. We exchanged pleasantries about the weather, sometimes, waved hello, but that was about it. 5 years living on the same street, and our interactions were minimal. Would you like to come in for coffee? The invitation surprised us both. He seemed taken aback for a second. Then he smiled. I'd like that, Eleanor. Thank you. As we settled in the kitchen, me making a fresh pot of coffee, him sitting at the table, I found myself studying him properly for the first time. Professor of English literature at the community college, neighborhood gossip said. Divorced, no children, around my age, maybe a few years younger. He had kind eyes and a quiet, steady presence. You seem different, he observed, accepting the coffee I offered. Different how? He considered his answer carefully. More present, somehow. Usually when we talk, it feels like you're halfway somewhere else, preoccupied. The observation was startling in its accuracy. Halfway somewhere else. How long had I been living that way? Physically present, but mentally consumed with Sophia's needs, her demands, her moods, her future? Decades, it felt like. I'm making some changes, I said simply. Good changes, I hope. I thought about the enrollment form on the counter, the trust documents with Arthur, the canceled credit cards, the shredded Princeton paperwork. Necessary ones, I replied. From upstairs came the sound of a door slamming, followed by muffled cursing. Sophia, discovering another consequence of her actions. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Everything all right? My daughter, I explained, managing a small, wry smile, is learning some difficult lessons. Ah, he nodded. The famous Sophia. I've seen her coming and going, but never had the pleasure of an introduction. Trust me, I said, thinking of the past few days. Pleasure isn't the word I'd use right now. He laughed, a warm, genuine sound, and I found myself joining him. The first genuine laughter I'd experienced in days. It felt freeing. You know, he said, glancing at the enrollment form, I teach Introduction to American Literature at the college, Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Are you recruiting potential students, Professor Carter? I teased. Just offering information, he smiled. The class has a good mix of traditional and returning students. You might find it interesting. We talked for a while longer. About books, about the neighborhood, about life in general. It was easy, natural, refreshing. As he left, I realized what had been missing from our brief interaction, the constant calculation of how each word and gesture would impact someone else's emotional state. The exhausting vigilance I'd maintained for years with Sophia. Talking with Ethan felt like a simple exchange between two adults. I picked up the enrollment form. Decision made. Whatever happened with Sophia, whether she chose state university or community college, whether she eventually understood my actions or resented them forever, I would no longer structure my entire existence around her reactions, her demands, her manipulations. For the first time in decades, I was making a choice solely for myself, and it felt like breathing after years underwater. 6 weeks later, I sat in Professor Carter's classroom, my heart pounding like a nervous teenager's. Ethan, Professor Carter, as I still called him in class, was returning our first analytical essays. He moved through the rows, handing papers back, offering quiet words of feedback. When he placed my paper on my desk, I saw the large red A at the top. A thrill of accomplishment shot through me, something I hadn't experienced in years. Excellent insights on Fitzgerald's use of symbolism, Eleanor, Ethan commented quietly as he passed my desk. He paused for a moment. Your perspective on the green light was particularly refreshing. Heat rose to my cheeks at the praise. At 58, I was old enough to be the mother of most of the students in the class. Yet here I was, blushing like a schoolgirl. Thank you, Professor, I murmured, clutching the paper. Don't forget your group presentations on Hemingway are next Tuesday, Ethan reminded the class as we packed up. Eleanor, could I speak with you for a moment? I approached his desk, still holding my essay. The classroom was emptying, leaving just the two of us. How are things at home? He asked quietly. He knew the broad strokes of my situation with Sophia. Over coffee after that first visit, I'd found myself unexpectedly unburdening to this near stranger who listened without judgment, offering only his steady presence and occasional insightful questions. Tense, I admitted. She accepted the scholarship at State, but she's treating it like exile to Siberia. Every conversation somehow becomes a referendum on how I've ruined her life. Ethan nodded sympathetically. The hardest lessons are rarely appreciated in the moment. I keep wondering if I'm being too harsh, I confessed. The guilt, a constant companion for years, still nipped at the edges of my resolve. From what you've told me, Ethan said, his voice kind but firm, you're finally being appropriately firm after years of enabling behavior that wasn't serving either of you. You set clear boundaries, you offered her viable options. That's not harsh, Eleanor. That's parenting. His validation eased the persistent guilt I'd been carrying. Thank you, I said softly. I needed to hear that. That's not why I asked you to stay, though, he smiled, suddenly seeming almost nervous. The English department is hosting a lecture series on Gothic literature next month, a visiting scholar from the UK. I wondered if you might be interested in attending. As your student, I clarified, my heart inexplicably racing. As my guest, he specified, his gaze steady. Outside of our academic relationship? I asked, genuinely concerned. Wouldn't that create a conflict of interest? Ethan nodded. I've already spoken with the department chair. If you're comfortable with it, another professor would grade your remaining assignments this semester to avoid any ethical issues. I wouldn't want anything to compromise your academic progress. His thoughtfulness touched me. He had considered the implications, handled the potential complications before even asking me. You've really considered this? I have, he admitted. I value our intellectual connection too much to compromise it with impropriety, but I also value our connection outside of class, Eleanor. In that case, I'd like that very much, Ethan. Walking to my car, I caught my reflection in a storefront window and paused. When had I started standing straighter? When had the perpetual worry lines between my brows softened? When had I last purchased clothes for myself that weren't on clearance? The woman looking back at me was still recognizably Eleanor Sullivan, but something fundamental had shifted. A confidence that came not from external validation, but from rediscovering my own worth, my own interests, my own path. At home, Sophia sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork from State University. She was scowling at her laptop. State's honors housing is already full, she announced without preamble, clearly in a bad mood. I have to choose between the regular dorms or a shared apartment off campus. What does your budget allow for? I asked, setting down my book bag.
The question clearly irritated her. Since implementing our new financial arrangement, the modest monthly stipend from the trust fund, I'd refused to solve these logistical or financial problems for her. I was there to advise, but the decisions and the legwork were hers. The apartment would be cheaper if I find 2 roommates, she admitted reluctantly, but I don't know anyone at State. Sounds like an opportunity to meet new people, I suggested, starting dinner preparations. Chicken and vegetables, simple, healthy, within my budget. Sophia watched me with narrowed eyes. You're different lately. Am I? You're, I don't know, less available. The observation was telling. To Sophia, my value had always been measured by my availability to meet her needs, solve her problems, smooth her path. I have my own studies to focus on, I replied. Speaking of which, I got an A- on my first essay. Good for you, she said, not entirely succeeding at hiding her sarcasm. Learning to analyze The Great Gatsby will really transform your career prospects. Rather than rise to the bait, I simply continued chopping vegetables. Actually, I've been invited to a lecture series on Gothic literature next month. Thrilling, she rolled her eyes. With Professor Carter. Something in my tone, something in the simple statement made her look up sharply. Her sarcasm evaporated, replaced by surprise. Wait, like a date? Yes, I said simply. She stared at me, confusion warring with disgust on her face. You're dating my literature professor? He's not your professor, I corrected. And yes, I'm exploring the possibility. That's weird, she muttered. Is it? I kept my tone light, refusing to let her discomfort dictate my feelings. I'm a single woman enjoying intellectual conversation with a man who shares my interests. Seems perfectly normal to me. You're almost 60, she said, as if stating an immutable fact that made dating impossible. 58, I corrected calmly, which means I potentially have decades of life ahead of me. Did you expect me to spend them all alone once you left for college? She had no answer for that. The truth was, she had probably never considered my life beyond its utility to hers. The idea that I might have my own interests, my own relationships, my own future, it was a foreign concept to her. Whatever, she finally muttered, returning to her laptop.
I need to make a decision about housing by Friday. The stipend you're allowing me barely covers anything. It covers necessities, I pointed out. Rent, food, transportation, books. If you want extras, you might consider a part-time job. A job? She looked genuinely shocked, as if the concept were entirely alien. While taking a full course load? Millions of students manage it every semester, I said. It's a standard part of the college experience for most people. This is punishment, she declared again, slamming her laptop shut. You're deliberately making things difficult for me. No, Sophia, I said, setting down my knife. I'm introducing you to reality. The reality most young adults face. Balancing responsibilities, making financial decisions, experiencing consequences. All because you overheard one stupid conversation? That conversation, I said quietly, my voice firm, was just the catalyst. This is about 19 years of patterns of manipulation, of dishonesty, of taking without giving. Patterns I should have addressed long ago. Our eyes met across the kitchen. For a brief moment, something like understanding flickered in hers. Recognition. Then her phone chimed, breaking the connection. It's Liam, she said, checking the message. He got into state too. Says he needs a roommate. Liam? I raised an eyebrow. Male roommate? Is that wise? She rolled her eyes. Liam's gay, Mom, but thanks for the 1950s morality check. If he's reliable and respectful, I offered, refusing to be baited, it could be a good solution.
Sophia seemed thrown by my reasonable response. She'd clearly expected opposition she could rail against. I'll tell him, maybe, she said cautiously, as if waiting for the catch. The doorbell rang. Sophia answered it before I could move. Brenda's voice drifted from the entryway, followed by her appearance in the kitchen doorway. Book club night, she announced cheerfully, holding up a bottle of wine. I brought the Pinot you like. Book club? Sophia echoed, looking from Brenda to me. First Thursday of the month, I explained, wiping my hands on a towel. We're discussing Rebecca tonight. You're welcome to join us if you've read it. Since when do you have a book club? Sophia asked, her voice laced with utter disbelief. Since 4 weeks ago, Brenda replied cheerfully, setting the wine on the counter. Your mom's analysis has been eye-opening, Sophia. Apparently studying literature formally gives one quite the critical perspective. The look of complete bewilderment on Sophia's face might have been comical under different circumstances. She was watching her carefully constructed image of me, the predictable, manipulable doormat with no life of her own beyond hers, crumble in real time. My quiet life was suddenly full of friends, full of studies, full of possibilities. I made chicken for dinner, I told her. Help yourself whenever you're hungry. We'll be in the living room. As Brenda and I left the kitchen, I heard Sophia's baffled murmur from behind us. Who are you? The question echoed in my mind as I greeted the 3 other women in our newly formed book club. Who was I now? Now that I was becoming the person I might have been all along, if I hadn't lost myself so completely in the consuming role of Sophia's mother. I was still discovering the answer, one day at a time, and for the first time in decades, the uncertainty felt exhilarating rather than terrifying. You're not even listening to me, Sophia's voice escalated, filling the kitchen with her familiar frustration. I heard every word, I replied calmly, looking up from my American Lit textbook. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and I was trying to finish reading before class. You don't want to attend State's orientation because it conflicts with Chloe Adams Hampton's weekend. I simply asked if missing the official welcome events, like meeting advisors and registering for classes, was wise. This isn't about orientation, she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. This is about you controlling every aspect of my life now. I closed my book, placing it gently on the table. No, Sophia, this is about you facing the reality that actions have consequences.
You rejected a scholarship without consulting me, lied about other opportunities, and deliberately misled me about your intentions. Now you're living with the results of those choices. That's not control, that's consequence. It was one stupid conversation, she shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and something that almost sounded like fear. One time I vented to my friends, and you've completely overreacted, ruined everything. Is that what you think this is about? I asked, my voice soft but penetrating. One conversation? What else? I took a deep breath. The time had come. The moment for complete honesty, for laying everything bare. It's time we had complete honesty between us, Sophia. All of it. Follow me. Curiosity temporarily overriding defiance, she followed me to my home office. It was a small room, but it was mine. It held my books, my computer, my quiet space. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a thick folder. "What's that?" she asked, her voice wary. "Evidence," I said, laying out the contents on my desk. Bank statements showing months of unauthorized charges on my credit cards. Photographs of jewelry you claimed was stolen that I found hidden in your closet. Printouts of social media posts where you ridiculed me to your friends, talking about my tragic life and how you were just tolerating me until college. And her journal entries describing plans to have me declared mentally incompetent. She stared at the damning collection, her face draining of color. The carefully constructed defiance crumbled in the face of such overwhelming, irrefutable proof. "This isn't about one conversation, Sophia," I repeated, my voice firm but without accusation. "It's about a pattern of deception, manipulation, and a complete lack of respect that I enabled for years because I didn't want to see it." You went through my private things?" she whispered, unable to muster her usual indignation. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual power. "Yes," I acknowledged. "After 19 years of respecting boundaries I believed were mutual, you consistently violated mine. With my finances, with my possessions, with my friendships, with my very identity in your journal." Silence. She looked at the paper spread across the desk, then at me. "So what now?" she demanded, some of the anger returning, a familiar defense mechanism. "You've got your file of evidence. Are you throwing me out? Disowning me?" "No," I said gently. "I'm giving you the gift I should have given you years ago, the chance to become a responsible, ethical adult. By controlling my money? By forcing me to go to state instead of Princeton?" She scoffed, but the sound lacked conviction. "That's your idea of a gift." "By allowing you to experience natural consequences," I corrected, "rather than shielding you from them. Princeton was never your right, Sophia. It was a privilege you hadn't earned through hard work and honesty. You had earned it through academic merit, yes, but you were expecting me to fund it based on manipulation." "Hadn't earned?" she scoffed again, a flicker of the old arrogance returning. "I had the grades. I got accepted." "And you lied about your alternatives," I finished for her. "Manipulated me into financial arrangements that would have crippled my future. Showed contempt for the very person you expected to fund your ambitions. That's not earning anything, Sophia. That's exploiting someone's love for you." She fell silent, staring at the papers. A flicker of something like shame crossed her features before hardening back into resentment. "So, that's it. We're done. You've made your point." "We're not done," I said, gathering the papers back into the folder. "We're just beginning a new chapter, one built on honesty, if we can manage it." I handed her an envelope that had arrived that day. "This came for you today, from State." She opened it reluctantly, scanning the contents. They want me to apply for their honors literature program?" She looked confused. But I'm pre-law. They were impressed by your application essay, I explained. Professor Albright, the department chair, thought you showed particular promise in literary analysis. How would he even see my application essay? She asked, frowning. I hesitated. This was another line I'd crossed, blurring the boundaries between her life and mine, even if it was done with good intentions. I I may have shown it to Ethan, Professor Carter. He shared it with some colleagues in the English department. He thought your writing was exceptional. You did what? Her indignation was immediate, powerful. That was private. It was a college application essay, Sophia, not a diary entry, and it's resulted in an opportunity you wouldn't have had otherwise. An opportunity I don't want, she snapped. I'm pre-law, not some English major. Then decline, I said simply. But consider why you're so set on law. Is it because you're passionate about it, or because it fits the narrative you've constructed about your future? The prestigious path, the impressive career. She stared at me, momentarily speechless. It was perhaps the first time I'd directly challenged the carefully curated image she'd built of herself, the public persona versus the private reality I'd seen in her journal. You don't know me at all, she finally said, her voice tight. I know you better than you think, I countered softly. I know you've been writing short stories since you were 12, stories you hide in a folder labeled Calcoats on your laptop. I know you spend hours analyzing film adaptations of classic novels, but tell everyone you're just watching for the costumes. I know you light up when discussing character motivations, but force yourself to sound equally enthusiastic about constitutional law. Her expression shifted from defiance to vulnerability so quickly it stole my breath. For a brief moment, my actual daughter, not the calculated persona she'd perfected, looked back at me. Her eyes, usually guarded, were wide, surprised, and afraid. When did you figure all that out? She asked quietly, the anger gone, replaced by a raw, exposed uncertainty. I've always seen you, Sophia, I said, my voice gentle, even when you thought I was blind to everything but my own need for your approval. She swallowed hard. It doesn't matter anyway. Literature doesn't pay the bills. Neither does an undergraduate degree in political science, I pointed out. Law school comes after, regardless of your major. What matters is what you do with the education. And at State, you'd have a chance to define yourself on your own terms, not through the prestige of an institution. To choose something because you love it, not because it looks good. She fingered the invitation from the Honors Lit program, conflict evident in her expression. I'd still be stuck at State. You'd have a chance to thrive at State, I corrected, to build genuine connections, to explore what truly interests you, to start building an authentic life rather than performing one. Is that what you're doing? She asked, looking at me again. The question held no sarcasm for once. Redefining yourself? I'm rediscovering the person I set aside, I corrected, to become what I thought you needed. There's a difference. And if I refuse your terms? She asked, her voice small again. If I try to find another way to Princeton? Or... That's your choice, I said. But my terms regarding financial support won't change. The trust fund is set up as Arthur explained. The decisions about how to use the stipend, where to live, whether to get a job, those are yours. But the money for Princeton, for unlimited spending, that is no longer available. She crumpled the honors program invitation in her fist. This isn't fair. It's perfectly fair, I said quietly. It's simply not what you wanted. I hate this, she whispered, and for the first time in our confrontation, I glimpsed genuine emotion, raw and painful, rather than a tactical display. I hate feeling trapped. That's not a pleasant feeling, is it? I said, my voice soft but steady. Now imagine how I felt when I discovered your plans to have me declared incompetent so you could access my assets, so you could trap me. She flinched as if physically struck. I I should never have written that down, she muttered, looking away. The problem isn't that you wrote it down, Sophia, I said. The problem is that you thought it at all, that you planned it, that you saw me not as your mother, but as an obstacle to be managed and eventually removed. She paced the small office, agitation evident in every movement. So, what am I supposed to do now? Just surrender? Accept defeat? This isn't a battle, Sophia, I said. It's a crossroads. You can continue fighting against consequences in reality, or you can learn from them. You can cling to a version of your life that requires manipulating others, or you can begin building something authentic, something real. Easy for you to say, she burst out. You suddenly have Dad's money and your perfect professor boyfriend and your cute little book club. You get to reinvent yourself while I'm stuck with the fallout. The fallout of your own choices, I reminded her gently. And yes, I do have new opportunities. Because for the first time in decades, I'm choosing myself rather than subordinating my needs and desires to yours. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for some sign of wavering, of guilt, of the old enabling Eleanor. Finding none, she snatched the crumpled honors program invitation from where she'd discarded it on the desk. Fine, she said, her voice tight. I'll consider it. Not because you want me to, but because having English Lit as a minor might distinguish my law school applications. It was a small concession, wrapped tightly in rationalization. Classic Sophia. But it was more than I had expected. That's a practical perspective, I acknowledged. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway, her hand on the frame. Does it make you happy? She asked, her voice barely audible. The question caught me off guard. Like what? Powerless, at your mercy. No, Sophia, I said, meeting her gaze squarely. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart that it came to this. But watching you continue on your previous path, living a lie, hurting yourself and others, that would break it more completely. Something in my tone must have reached her because she looked away first. I have to call Liam about the apartment, she muttered, disappearing down the hallway. After she left, I sat motionless, emotionally drained from the confrontation. The folder of evidence remained on my desk, physical proof of years of manipulation and deceit. Yet, alongside the anger and disappointment it represented, I found myself wondering what I might have done differently. What signs had I missed? How had my own longing blinded me? My phone chimed with a text from Ethan. Still on for coffee tomorrow? The simple message brought a small smile to my face. Whatever uncertainty lay ahead with Sophia, I was no longer navigating it alone or while neglecting my own needs and happiness. That, at least, was progress. Significant progress. The August heat was stifling as I helped Sophia carry the last box up 3 flights of stairs to her apartment near State University's campus. It was an old building, functional but worn, a far cry from the manicured grounds and stately dorms of Princeton. Liam, her gay roommate, who seemed to possess a surprising design sense for a college freshman, had already arranged the common areas with a mix of thrift store finds and hand-me-down furniture. That's everything, I said, setting the box labeled books on her bare mattress. Sophia surveyed her new bedroom, roughly half the size of her room at home, with beige walls, a single window offering a view of the parking lot, and a distinct lack of the designer touches she was accustomed to. It's depressing, she declared. It's a blank canvas, I countered, trying to inject some positivity. And it's yours to design however you want. Within your budget, she gave me a sideways glance, a hint of the old resentment in her eyes. That's your solution to everything now, isn't it? Financial independence is part of adulthood, Sophia, I said, refusing to be baited, something most people learn much earlier than 19. Liam appeared in the doorway, his slender frame leaning against the frame, wiping sweat from his brow. My parents made me get a job at 16, he offered. Best thing they ever did for me. I appreciate everything so much more when I have to work for it. Sophia shot him a betrayed look. Whose side are you on? Liam grinned. Team reality. It's less crowded. He paused. The coffee shop where I work is hiring, by the way. Employee discount on caffeine. Essential for surviving freshman year. After he disappeared back to the living room, presumably to supervise the placement of a questionable armchair, Sophia muttered, I can't believe I agreed to live with someone who thinks minimum wage jobs build character. He seems grounded, I observed. A good influence, perhaps. He's the only person from high school who would still talk to me after. She trailed off, not meeting my eyes. After your circumstances changed, I finished for her gently. After everyone found out I got downgraded from Princeton to State, she corrected bitterly. Chloe made sure everyone knew, posted about it on social media, pitied me publicly. Friendship based on status is rarely lasting, I said, repeating a truth I'd learned the hard way myself. Thanks for the fortune cookie wisdom, she snapped, then immediately looked away. Sorry, I'm just stressed. The apology, however reluctant, was notable, a small crack in her defensive armor. Understandable, I acknowledged. Change is difficult. We finished unpacking in companionable silence, such as it was. When everything was in place, clothes in the dresser, books on a makeshift shelf, we stood awkwardly in the center of her small room, the moment of farewell looming. So, Sophia said, fiddling with the hem of her t-shirt, I guess this is it. I'm only 40 minutes away, I reminded her. But yes, this is the beginning of your independent life, your journey. She nodded, her expression unreadable. When does your fall semester start? I asked, making conversation. Next week. I'm taking 3 classes this time. My first semester back at community college, I'd started with just 2. Ambitious, she said, with only a hint of sarcasm. I'm enjoying the challenge, I replied honestly, more than I expected. Another awkward silence fell between us. So much remained unresolved. Years of hurt, mistrust, and unmet expectations hovered in the air. Yet neither of us seemed ready to bridge the deeper divides, to delve back into the painful truths we'd unearthed. Well, I finally said, reaching for my purse, I should get going, let you settle in. Wait, she blurted, stopping me as I turned towards the door. She hesitated, chewing on her lip. I wanted to ask. Yes? She took a deep breath. The trust fund, is it really there, or was that just something you said to make me cooperate? The question, simple as it was, revealed so much about how she still viewed me, and the world, as someone potentially capable of the same manipulation she had employed. It exists, Sophia, I said firmly. It's with Arthur Jenkins, the family attorney. The terms are exactly as I explained. You'll receive the modest monthly stipend we agreed on while you're in school. The full amount becomes accessible after 2 years of post-graduation employment, provided you meet the conditions laid out. Relief flickered across her features before she quickly masked it. And if I wanted to switch to the literature program instead of pre-law, she asked, the question emerging haltingly, would that violate the terms? The question caught me by surprise. It was the first indication that she might actually be considering the honors lit program State had offered. No, I said, it wouldn't. The terms are based on attendance and completion of a degree, not specific majors. She nodded, as if confirming something to herself. Good to know. Are you considering it? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral, though my heart felt a sudden illogical leap of hope. Maybe, she admitted reluctantly, looking away again. Professor Albright called personally yesterday, said my application essay showed remarkable insight into Austen's use of irony. That's quite a compliment, I said, from the department chair. It would still be State, she pointed out, as if testing my reaction. The quality of education depends far more on the student's engagement than the institution's prestige, I said, something I've learned firsthand these past months. Liam appeared again in the doorway, this time holding car keys. "Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Sullivan, but we've got that department mixer in an hour, and I still need to shower." "Department mixer?" I echoed, looking at Sophia. "For the literature program," she explained, not meeting my eyes. "I haven't decided anything. I'm just exploring options." "Of course," I nodded, hiding my surprise. "A literature department mixer, not a pre-law one." "That seems wise, to explore your options." Another silence fell, more charged than the last. 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I would have filled it with reassurances, offers of help, frantic questions about details. Now, I simply waited, allowing Sophia to navigate the moment on her own terms. "I should go," I finally said, moving toward the door. "Mom," she called, stopping me. The words sounded different somehow, less a title of convenience, less a role she was performing, and more an acknowledgement of a relationship, a tentative one, perhaps, but real nonetheless. "Thank you," she said, her voice low, "for helping with the move." "You're welcome," I replied simply. As I drove home, a swirl of emotions washed over me. Pride in Sophia's small steps towards authenticity, grief for the years of manipulation and the pain it had caused, hope for genuine change, for a real connection someday, and yes, a lingering fear that I was somehow failing her by enforcing these boundaries, by no longer being the safety net she'd always taken for granted. My phone rang through the car's speaker system. "Ethan calling," the automated voice announced. "Hi," I answered, his name bringing an involuntary smile to my face. "How did the move go?" His voice was warm, filled with genuine interest. "Better than expected," I admitted. "She's considering switching to the literature program." "That's significant," he observed. "Her choice?" "Apparently," I said, though I'm sure she'd deny I had any influence. He laughed. "Progress doesn't always announce itself with fanfare, does it?" "No," I agreed. "Sometimes it whispers, through the cracks of resistance." "Poetic," he said. "You're becoming quite the literature student." "I have an excellent professor," I teased. "Speaking of which," his tone shifted slightly, "I wanted to talk to you about the Gothic literature lecture series next month. There's been a change of venue." "Oh?" "Yes. My colleague, Professor Harrison, offered his lake house for the weekend. It would mean staying overnight. Several of the faculty are bringing partners." The implication hung in the air between us. We'd been seeing each other regularly for nearly 3 months now. Coffee dates, dinners, campus events, always in public settings. This would be a significant shift. "That sounds lovely," I said, surprised by my own lack of hesitation. "Really?" Relief colored his voice. "I wasn't sure if it would seem too presumptuous." "Ethan," I laughed softly, "I'm 58, not 18. I think I can handle a weekend away without requiring a permission slip." His laugh was delighted. "You've changed so much since we first started talking, Eleanor. It's like watching someone step into the light after being in shadow." The observation resonated deeply. I had been living in the shadow of Sophia's needs and manipulations for so long that I'd forgotten how it felt to stand fully in my own light. 3 months into the fall semester, I sat in the university auditorium, a sea of faces blurring before me, watching Sophia step up to the podium. As one of 2 freshmen selected to present at the literature department's undergraduate symposium, she looked both terrified and exhilarated. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice wavering for just a second before finding its strength. "My paper explores the parallels between economic dependency and emotional manipulation in Jane Austen's Mansfield Park and Charlotte Perkins Beelman's The Yellow Wallpaper." Pride, pure and untainted, swelled in my chest as she articulated her analysis with growing confidence. She spoke not just with academic rigor, but with a passion that felt real, authentic. Something about her seemed different. Not just her appearance, though she'd abandoned her expensive highlights and designer clothes for a simpler, more student-like style, but something in her bearing. She stood taller, held herself with less artifice. Liam sat beside me, occasionally snapping photos with his phone for what he called the roommate archives. In the 3 months they'd lived together, he'd become an unexpected ally in Sophia's transformation. His non-nonsense approach, cutting through her lingering manipulative tactics with disarming humor and brutal honesty, seemed to be exactly what she needed. "She's actually good at this," he whispered to me as Sophia fielded questions from faculty members, her answers thoughtful and articulate, like genuinely good, not just faking it to impress people. "Good," I agreed, watching my daughter with a sense of wonder. "I think she is." After the symposium, we waited in the lobby as Sophia accepted congratulations from professors and fellow students. When she finally approached us, her cheeks were flushed with genuine pleasure, not the practiced performance of popularity I'd seen for so many years. "Professor Albright wants me to expand my paper for the regional conference in spring," she announced, barely containing her excitement. "That's wonderful, Sophia," I said, resisting the urge to pull her into a hug. Our relationship remained tentative, the old patterns too easily triggered by physical proximity, by gestures that might be misinterpreted as the old enabling. "The department's hosting a dinner for the presenters," she continued, fiddling with the program handed to her. "So I can't do coffee like we planned." "Of course," I nodded, understanding. "This is a significant achievement. You should celebrate with your peers and professors." She hesitated, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. It was the kind of hesitation I recognized from years past, the prelude to a request or a manipulation. But this time, it felt different. "You could come," she offered tentatively, finally meeting my eyes. "To the dinner, if you want. Professor Albright said presenters could bring guests." The invitation caught me completely off guard. In the months since she'd started at State, our interactions had been limited to occasional coffee meetups at a neutral spot, brief phone calls, civil but guarded, with unspoken tensions hovering beneath the surface. This was an olive branch, a step into my world. "I'd like that, Sophia," I said, very much. Liam cleared his throat dramatically. "And what about the loyal roommate who's endured endless practice presentations and stress-induced kitchen messes? Who deserves a steak dinner for services rendered?" Sophia rolled her eyes, but with affection rather than disdain. "Yes, Liam, you're invited too, though I'm not sure academia is ready for your commentary on literary theory as it relates to reality television." "Honey," Liam retorted, linking her arm with hers, "academia needs my commentary. Now, I believe you promised that if this went well, we'd finally replace that tragic futon with a real couch." "I said we'd discuss it," she corrected, but she was smiling. As they continued their good-natured bickering, I observed with quiet amazement how differently Sophia interacted with Liam compared to her high school friends like Chloe Adams. There was no calculation in her responses, no careful management of her image, just the natural rhythm of genuine friendship. The department dinner proved equally revealing. Seated at a round table with Sophia, Liam, and several faculty members, I watched my daughter engage in earnest academic discussion, her perspectives thoughtful rather than performative. When Professor Albright inquired about her pre-law background, she answered with unexpected candor. "I was never actually interested in law," she admitted with a shrug. "It just seemed prestigious, guaranteed to impress people." "And literature doesn't?" Professor Albright asked with a raised eyebrow. "Not in the same way," she shrugged again. "But I'm finding I care less about impressing people these days." Her eyes flickered to me as she spoke. A moment of silent acknowledgement passed between us. She was admitting the performance, admitting who it was for. Later, as Liam engaged the professors in a spirited debate about film adaptations, Sophia leaned toward me. "I ran into Chloe Adams yesterday," she said quietly. "How was that?" "Weird," she traced the rim of her water glass. "She was all fake nice, asking about State with this poor you expression. Then she started talking about all the amazing connections she's making at Princeton, who she knows, which exclusive events she's been invited to. "And how did that make you feel?" I asked carefully. Sophia considered the question seriously. "6 months ago, it would have devastated me," she admitted, "made me feel like a complete failure. But yesterday, I just felt sorry for her." Sorry for Chloe Adams? All she talked about was who she knows and which party she's been invited to. Nothing about what she's learning or what interests her. Nothing real. She shook her head. "I kept thinking about something Liam said when I first moved in. He told me, Princeton would have given you a great network, but State is giving you a self." She paused. It sounded like greeting card nonsense at the time. But now, I think he might be right. The admission, so quietly offered, signified more progress than any academic achievement could. State wasn't just a consequence, it was becoming a catalyst. "Liam seems wise beyond his years," I observed. "Don't tell him that," she groaned. "His ego is unbearable enough already." We shared a small laugh, perhaps our first genuine moment of shared humor, free of sarcasm or hidden barbs, in months. "Mom," she said hesitantly, her voice lower now, "there's something else I wanted to tell you." "Yes?" "I've been seeing someone," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "From the counseling center, a therapist." "Oh, Sophia," I said, hiding my surprise. That's a courageous step." "Liam thought it might help," she mumbled, avoiding my gaze. "With, everything." "That's very mature of you." "We've been talking about attachment issues and adoption trauma." She looked down at her hands. "Dr. Evans thinks some of my behaviors, my need for control, my difficulty with trust, my fear of abandonment leading to pushing people away, might stem from early childhood experiences, before you adopted me." "That seems plausible, Sophia," I acknowledged. It aligned with what little I knew of her history. "It's not an excuse," she added quickly, looking up again, her voice firm now, "for how I treated you, for the things I did. She's very clear about that. It just helps me understand some of the patterns, why I felt like I had to manipulate situations to get what I needed or protect myself." "Understanding is the first step," I said. She nodded, fidgeting with her napkin. "There's something else, something I've never told you." I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. "When I was 14, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, I found those letters from the adoption agency, tucked away in a box in the attic." My heart clenched. The sealed letters. I hadn't wanted to read them, fearing they contained painful details that would make me love her less. I'd only seen fragments enough to confirm she'd been in multiple foster homes. "I only saw fragments," she continued, her voice small and raw, "enough to piece together that I wasn't anyone's first choice, or second, or third." She swallowed hard. "I convinced myself that you only kept me because you were desperate, because you couldn't have kids of your own, because you had no better options." Her eyes, wide and vulnerable, met mine. The pain of that realization, carried for years in secret, was etched on her face. "Sophia," I said gently, reaching across the table, resting my hand over hers, "that wasn't true. None of it was true." "But the letters." "The letters told a story of hardship, yes," I said, "but they didn't tell the whole story, my story. I chose you, Sophia, specifically. Your file, it was the only one I requested to see after reading the summaries." Surprise flickered across her face, genuine, uncalculated surprise. "Why?" The question transported me back 19 years, to a small office, a social worker's desk, a photograph of a solemn child with defensive posture and weary expression. "Because," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "the social worker described you as challenging but brilliant. Because your eyes, They held questions I wanted to help answer. Because when every other prospective parent saw problems, I saw potential. I saw a child who had been through too much, yes, but I also saw resilience, intelligence, a spark. I saw you, Sophia, and I wanted to be your mother more than anything. She blinked rapidly, tears welling in her eyes. Emotion, raw and unfiltered, was breaking through her carefully maintained composure. I've been awful to you," she whispered, her voice cracking. At times, yes, I agreed, not sugarcoating the truth. Healing required acknowledging the reality of the past. You were, and I enabled behaviors I should have addressed years ago. I let my own fears and my own need for your affection blind me. We both have healing to do, she said, tears now streaming down her face, though her voice was steady. Liam's loud laugh drew our attention back to the wider table conversation, providing a welcome respite from the intensity of our exchange. Sophia discreetly wiped her eyes with her napkin before rejoining the discussion, her academic persona slipping back into place. But this time, it felt less like a deceptive mask and more like a comfortable garment she could choose to wear. As I drove home later that evening, a quiet understanding settled over me. Something profound had shifted between us. Not forgiveness, that would require more time and more conversations, but understanding, a tentative bridge spanning the chasm of hurt and deception that had defined our relationship for too long. The raw wounds were beginning to scab over, allowing for the possibility of real healing. My phone beeped with a text message at a stoplight. I expected Ethan, who was attending a conference in Chicago, but instead, I saw Sophia's name. Thank you for coming tonight. It meant more than I can say. Simple words. Words that would have seemed insignificant, perhaps even manipulative, months ago. But now, they carried the weight of genuine emotion. And for the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope that perhaps, beneath the layers of manipulation and calculation, my daughter was finally finding her authentic self. And maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward for us, together.
I still can't believe you're making me do this, Sophia muttered as we walked across the crowded hotel lobby. She tugged self-consciously at the simple black dress she was wearing. I'm not making you do anything, Sophia, I reminded her gently. I merely suggested it might be healing, an opportunity. You agreed. Momentary insanity, she grumbled, but there was no real heat in her complaint. The Celebrating Women in Literature benefit had been Ethan's suggestion, a prestigious annual event that brought together academics, publishers, and literary figures from across the region. This year's gathering held special significance for me. My recently published collection of personal essays titled Second Chapters was among those selected for recognition. There she is, Ethan said warmly, appearing at my side, handsome in his suit, the woman of the hour. Hardly, I demurred, though the pleasure at his pride warmed me through. I'm just one of 20 authors being acknowledged. The only first-time author, he corrected, placing a gentle kiss on my cheek. That makes you special. Sophia watched our interaction with a slightly bemused expression. Though she'd gradually accepted Ethan's place in my life over the past year, she still seemed surprised by outward displays of affection between us. Professor Carter, she acknowledged with a nod that was almost respectful. Sophia, he returned with a warm smile, your mother tells me your research paper was accepted for publication in the undergraduate journal. Congratulations. She couldn't quite hide her pride, a genuine blush rising to her cheeks. It's not a big deal. Publishing as a sophomore is absolutely a big deal, he countered, his voice firm but encouraging. Especially in a peer-reviewed journal, it's an exceptional accomplishment. Before she could respond, a familiar voice called my name. Eleanor Sullivan? Is that you? I turned to see Brenda approaching, elegant in a navy dress I'd helped her select for the occasion. She beamed, embracing me tightly. There's my literary star, she exclaimed. I've already told everyone at my table that I knew you when you were just a harried mom with a secret notebook of stories. Hardly a star, I protested, laughing.
But thank you for coming, Brenda. As we settled at our assigned table, I scanned the room out of habit, noting the elegant decorations, the mingling guests. My gaze stopped abruptly on a familiar face 3 tables away, Chloe Adams. She sat with her parents, her expression sour as her mother chatted animatedly with table mates. When she noticed my gaze, her eyes widened in recognition before she deliberately looked away, turning her head stiffly. Sophia followed my line of sight. "Great," she muttered under her breath. "The Adams family is here." "Mrs. Adams serves on the Literary Foundation's board," Ethan explained quietly. "Political appointment. She gives large donations but has limited interest in actual literature." "That tracks," Sophia said dryly, a hint of her old sharp wit, but this time directed outwards, not at me. Throughout dinner, I caught Chloe stealing glances at our table, her curiosity evident despite her affected disinterest. When the awards portion of the evening began, she leaned forward attentively as the foundation director announced each honored author. "Our next recognition goes to a remarkable new voice in personal essay," the director announced. "Eleanor Sullivan's collection, Second Chapters, chronicles her journey from devoted single mother to rediscovering her own identity in middle age. Please welcome Eleanor to receive her award." The applause that accompanied my walk to the stage felt surreal, acknowledgement from literary peers for words I'd hidden in private notebooks for decades. I accepted the elegant crystal award, the weight solid in my hands. "Thank you," I said simply when I reached the podium. For most of my adult life, I defined myself through one primary role, mother. It was only when that role was challenged, when the foundation of my identity shifted, that I discovered the person who existed beyond it.
Second Chapters is dedicated to anyone who has ever wondered if it's too late to reimagine their story. I paused, looking out at the audience. It never is. The brief speech earned warm applause as I returned to our table. Ethan squeezed my hand, his pride palpable. Brenda discreetly wiped a tear from her eye. Sophia's reaction surprised me the most. Her expression held genuine admiration, mixed with something that looked almost like regret. "Congratulations," she said quietly as I sat down. She gestured towards the award. It's really good, Mom. The book, I mean, it's really good." The acknowledgement from the daughter who had once mocked my intelligence, who had called me stupid for not understanding half the book she read, was perhaps more meaningful than the award itself. As the ceremony concluded and guests began to mingle, Mrs. Adams approached our table, Chloe reluctantly in tow. "Eleanor Sullivan," she exclaimed with practiced charm, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Your essay collection was simply marvelous, so raw and honest about the sacrifices of motherhood." "Thank you, Mrs. Adams," I replied politely. "And Sophia?" Her gaze shifted to my daughter, assessing her quickly. "Chloe tells me you're at State now. How nice." The slight pause, the carefully chosen word, nice, conveyed volumes about her assessment of State compared to Princeton. "It's been transformative," Sophia replied with unexpected poise, her voice steady. "The literature program is exceptional." "Literature?" Mrs. Adams's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "I thought you were pre-law, dear." "I discovered my actual passion," Sophia said, meeting her gaze directly, "rather than following a prescribed path. State's program has given me opportunities I wouldn't have found elsewhere." Chloe's expression soured further. "Like what?" "Publishing research as a sophomore, for one," Ethan interjected smoothly, his smile polite but his eyes twinkling. "Sophia's analysis of economic dependency in classic literature has received considerable attention." "How fascinating," Mrs. Adams replied with the automatic response of someone who found it anything but. "Well, we should circulate. Lovely to see you all doing so well." As they departed, their backs stiff, Sophia released a small breath. "That was satisfying," Brenda supplied with a grin. "I was going to say weird," Sophia admitted. She paused, reflecting. "A year ago, maybe even 6 months ago,
I would have been devastated by her condescension, felt like the biggest loser in the room. Now, it just seems sad, like that's all she has. Progress, Ethan noted, his voice gentle. The evening continued with introductions to publishers, academics, and fellow writers, a world I had never imagined myself occupying. Through it all, Sophia remained by my side, observing with quiet interest rather than the resentment I might have expected from her former self. As the event wound down, we found ourselves in a quiet corner of the lobby, waiting for the valet to bring our cars. "Thank you for coming tonight, Sophia," I told her. She shrugged, but the gesture lacked its former dismissiveness. It was a genuine shrug this time, not a dismissal of me. "It was interesting, seeing you in this world. You seem different." "Different how?" "I don't know, more solid somehow, like you're fully present in your skin." She looked away for a moment. "It's strange realizing your parent is an actual person with their own life and interests, not just mom." The observation, offered so casually, revealed just how far she had come from the self-centered teenager who had seen me only as an extension of her needs, her problems, her status. "It's part of growing up, I guess," I said gently, realizing that parents are people too, with their own stories, their own dreams. "I guess," she hesitated, "would you have found this path if things hadn't changed between us? If I had just gone to Princeton, would you still be here?" The question was perceptive and surprisingly self-aware. It acknowledged her role in the upheaval, not just mine. "I don't know, Sophia," I answered honestly. "Maybe not."
Sometimes it takes a seismic disruption to reveal new possibilities, to force you to look at things differently, to step outside the life you expected. She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "I'm sorry it had to happen that way." The apology. Simple, heartfelt, and for the first time, not qualified or followed by an excuse. It hung between us, neither fully sufficient to erase the past, nor entirely necessary given the present. We both understood that our journey had been complex, messy, the fault lines running in both directions. "We're here now," I said finally, both finding our paths. Ethan and Brenda joined us as the valet arrived with our cars. Goodbyes were exchanged, plans made for Brenda's upcoming birthday dinner with her husband, Marco. As Sophia prepared to leave in her modest used car, purchased with her earnings from the coffee shop job she'd initially resisted, supplemented by her stipend, she paused. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said quietly, "for the book, for everything." The words, so unexpected, from the daughter who had once dismissed me as intellectually inferior, whose opinion I had so desperately craved and feared, they brought tears to my eyes. "I'm proud of you too, Sophia," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. "More than you know." Driving home with Ethan, I reflected on the evening's significance. Not just the professional recognition, but the public affirmation of the changes both Sophia and I had undergone. "You're quiet," Ethan observed, reaching from my hand as we drove. "Just thinking," I said, "about how much has changed in 2 years." "For the better?" I considered the question carefully. Despite the pain, despite the difficult conversations, despite the adjustments. "Yes," I said finally, "for the better. Undeniably for the better." "You're not even listening to me," Sophia's voice escalated, filling the kitchen with her familiar frustration. "I heard every word," I replied calmly, looking up from my American Lit textbook. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, and I was trying to finish reading before class. "You don't want to attend State's orientation because it conflicts with Chloe Adams's Hamptons weekend. I simply asked if missing the official welcome events, like meeting advisors and registering for classes, was wise." "This isn't about orientation," she shouted, slamming her hand on the table. "This is about you controlling every aspect of my life now." I closed my book, placing it gently on the table. "No, Sophia, this is about you facing the reality that actions have consequences.
You rejected a scholarship without consulting me, lied about other opportunities, and deliberately misled me about your intentions. Now you're living with the results of those choices. That's not control. That's consequence. It was one stupid conversation, she shouted, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and something that almost sounded like fear. One time I vented to my friends, and you've completely overreacted, ruined everything. Is that what you think this is about? I asked, my voice soft but penetrating. One conversation? What else? I took a deep breath. The time had come. The moment for complete honesty, for laying everything bare. It's time we had complete honesty between us, Sophia. All of it. Follow me. Curiosity temporarily overriding defiance, she followed me to my home office. It was a small room, but it was mine. It held my books, my computer, my quiet space. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and removed a thick folder. "What's that?" she asked, her voice wary. "Evidence," I said, laying out the contents on my desk. Bank statements showing months of unauthorized charges on my credit cards. Photographs of jewelry you claimed was stolen that I found hidden in your closet. Printouts of social media posts where you ridiculed me to your friends, talking about my tragic life and how you were just tolerating me until college. And her journal entries describing plans to have me declared mentally incompetent. She stared at the damning collection, her face draining of color. The carefully constructed defiance crumbled in the face of such overwhelming, irrefutable proof. "This isn't about one conversation, Sophia," I repeated, my voice firm but without accusation. "It's about a pattern of deception, manipulation, and a complete lack of respect that I enabled for years, because I didn't want to see it. You went through my private things," she whispered, unable to muster her usual indignation. Her voice was small, stripped of its usual power. "Yes," I acknowledged. "After 19 years of respecting boundaries I believed were mutual, you consistently violated mine. With my finances, with my possessions, with my friendships, with my very identity in your journal." Silence. She looked at the papers spread across the desk, then at me. "So what now?" she demanded, some of the anger returning, a familiar defense mechanism. "You've got your file of evidence. Are you throwing me out? Disowning me?" "No," I said gently. "I'm giving you the gift I should have given you years ago, the chance to become a responsible, ethical adult. By controlling my money, by forcing me to go to State instead of Princeton," she scoffed, but the sound lacked conviction. "That's your idea of a gift?" "By allowing you to experience natural consequences," I corrected, "rather than shielding you from them. Princeton was never your right, Sophia. It was a privilege you hadn't earned through hard work and honesty. You had earned it through academic merit, yes, but you were expecting me to fund it based on manipulation." "Hadn't earned?" she scoffed again, a flicker of the old arrogance returning. "I had the grades. I got accepted." "And you lied about your alternatives," I finished for her. "Manipulated me into financial arrangements that would have crippled my future. Showed contempt for the very person you expected to fund your ambitions. That's not earning anything, Sophia. That's exploiting someone's love for you." She fell silent, staring at the papers. A flicker of something like shame crossed her features before hardening back into resentment. "So, that's it. We're done. You've made your point." "We're not done," I said, gathering the papers back into the folder. "We're just beginning a new chapter, one built on honesty, if we can manage it." I handed her an envelope that had arrived that day. "This came for you today, from State." She opened it reluctantly, scanning the contents. They want me to apply for their honors literature program?" She looked confused. "But I'm pre-law." "They were impressed by your application essay," I explained. "Professor Albright, the department chair, thought you showed particular promise in literary analysis." "How would he even see my application essay?" she asked, frowning. I hesitated. This was another line I'd crossed, blurring the boundaries between her life and mine, even if it was done with good intentions. I may have shown it to Ethan, Professor Carter. He shared it with some colleagues in the English department. He thought your writing was exceptional. You did what? Her indignation was immediate, powerful. That was private. It was a college application essay, Sophia, not a diary entry, and it's resulted in an opportunity you wouldn't have had otherwise. An opportunity I don't want, she snapped. I'm pre-law, not some English major. Then decline, I said simply. But consider why you're so set on law. Is it because you're passionate about it, or because it fits the narrative you've constructed about your future, the prestigious path, the impressive career? She stared at me, momentarily speechless. It was perhaps the first time I'd directly challenged the carefully curated image she'd built of herself, the public persona versus the private reality I'd seen in her journal. You don't know me at all, she finally said, her voice tight. I know you better than you think, I countered softly. I know you've been writing short stories since you were 12, stories you hide in a folder labeled calc coats on your laptop. I know you spend hours analyzing film adaptations of classic novels, but tell everyone you're just watching for the costumes. I know you light up when discussing character motivations, but force yourself to sound equally enthusiastic about constitutional law. Her expression shifted from defiance to vulnerability so quickly it stole my breath. For a brief moment, my actual daughter, not the calculated persona she'd perfected, looked back at me. Her eyes, usually guarded, were wide, surprised, and afraid. When did you figure all that out? She asked quietly, the anger gone, replaced by a raw, exposed uncertainty. I've always seen you, Sophia, I said, my voice gentle, even when you thought I was blind to everything but my own need for your approval. She swallowed hard. It doesn't matter anyway. Literature doesn't pay the bills. Neither does an undergraduate degree in political science, I pointed out. Law school comes after, regardless of your major. What matters is what you do with the education. And at State, you'd have a chance to define yourself on your own terms, not through the prestige of an institution. To choose something because you love it, not because it looks good. She fingered the invitation from the Honors Lit program, conflict evident in her expression. I'd still be stuck at State. You'd have a chance to thrive at State, I corrected, to build genuine connections, to explore what truly interests you, to start building an authentic life rather than performing one. Is that what you're doing? She asked, looking at me again. The question held no sarcasm for once. Redefining yourself? I'm rediscovering the person I set aside, I corrected. To become what I thought you needed, there's a difference. And if I refuse your terms, she asked, her voice small again, if I try to find another way to Princeton, or... That's your choice, I said, but my terms regarding financial support won't change. The trust fund is set up as Arthur explained. The decisions about how to use the stipend, where to live, whether to get a job, those are yours. The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning, nestled between a faculty newsletter and a reminder about Ethan's upcoming birthday. The sender name made my heart skip a beat, Sophia Sullivan. Subject, can we talk? The body of the email was formal, carefully worded. Mom, I've been working through some difficult material in therapy lately, and Dr. Evans suggested it might be helpful to have a structured conversation with you. If you're willing, I'd like to come home this weekend. Just us. No Ethan, no Liam, no distractions. There are things I need to say properly and questions I need to ask. I understand if this is too much or if you need time to consider. Sophia. The formal tone, so unlike our recent text exchanges, filled with book recommendations and updates on Ethan's cat, okay, maybe not Ethan's cat, but you get the idea, sent a ripple of apprehension through me. After nearly 2 years of gradual rebuilding, our relationship had reached a place of cautious stability. We spoke regularly, shared occasional meals, celebrated holidays together. The raw wounds had scabbed over, if not fully healed. But a structured conversation? Difficult material? What could prompt this? After consideration and a brief, reassuring conversation with Ethan, I replied simply, "I'll be here. Saturday works best." The intervening days passed with a mounting tension I couldn't shake. I found myself distracted during classes, my thoughts repeatedly returning to Sophia's cryptic message. By Saturday morning, I'd cycled through dozens of possibilities, from a complete reconciliation to a renewed confrontation. Sophia arrived precisely at noon, her expression inscrutable as she declined my offer of lunch. "I'd rather just talk first," she said, setting a leather-bound notebook on the coffee table. It looked thick, well used. "If that's okay." We settled in the living room. The familiar setting, filled with my books, the comfortable armchair Ethan favored, the new couch Sophia and Liam had helped me pick out last year, it suddenly felt formal, charged with unspoken expectations. "So," I began when she remained silent, clasping my hands in my lap, "you wanted to talk." Sophia nodded, visibly gathering her courage. She fiddled with the edge of the notebook. "Dr. Evans and I have been focusing on something called radical honesty in our sessions. It's challenging, I can imagine." "It is," she admitted. "Part of the process involves acknowledging harm I've caused and taking full responsibility, without deflection, without excuses." She opened the notebook, revealing pages of handwritten notes. "I've spent months writing all this down, trying to be completely honest about my behavior toward you." My breath caught in my throat. This was not what I had expected, not the focus. You don't have to," I began, unsure I was ready to hear it all laid bare, to see the full scope of the damage in the light of her own admission. "I do," she interrupted gently, looking up, her eyes steady. "For me, as much as for you. I need to say it, all of it." She took a deep breath, her gaze meeting mine, and began reading from her notebook. "Mom," she read, her voice clear and unwavering, though her hands trembled slightly. "For most of my life, I manipulated, deceived, and emotionally exploited you. I used your love as a weapon against you. I deliberately made you feel intellectually inferior to boost my own ego. I lied about trivial matters and significant ones. I stole from you, not just objects and money, but opportunities and peace of mind." Her voice remained steady despite the damning self-assessment. It was the voice of a scholar presenting research, detached yet precise. "I sabotaged your friendships out of jealousy. I ridiculed you behind your back while accepting your sacrifices. I made you feel that you were lucky to have me in your life when the truth was exactly the opposite. When I discovered an opportunity to attend Oxford, I hid it because I didn't want you to benefit from it. When I received a full scholarship to State, I rejected it because I wanted you to suffer financially for my prestige. I wanted to punish you for my own insecurities, I guess." Each admission felt like opening a wound I thought had healed. Yet somehow, hearing her say the words aloud, claiming responsibility, the pain felt cleansing. Less a re-injury, more a final acknowledgement of the truth. "Most unforgivably," she continued, her voice dropping slightly but remaining firm, "I actively planned to have you declared mentally incompetent so I could control your assets. This wasn't a momentary lapse or a teenage whim. It was a calculated, sustained effort to strip you of your autonomy, to erase you." She looked up from her notes, her gaze meeting mine directly, unwavering. "I hurt you, deliberately and repeatedly. I can't undo that harm, but I can acknowledge it, without excuses, without deflection. I am profoundly sorry, Mom, not just for what I did, but for who I chose to be, for the person I became." The silence that followed was charged with 2 decades of complicated emotions. Raw honesty hung in the air, heavy and fragile. "That couldn't have been easy to say, Sophia," I finally managed, my voice thick with unshed tears. "It wasn't," she admitted, "but it's been even harder living with the knowledge of who I was, who I still am in some ways, though I'm trying to change." "You have changed," I said softly. "I've witnessed it. I've seen your growth, your passion for literature, your friendship with Liam, your willingness to look inward." "Parts of me have," she acknowledged, "but the core patterns, they're deeply ingrained. Dr. Evans says they likely stem from attachment trauma during my first years of life, before you adopted me." She hesitated, then asked the question that seemed to be the real purpose of her visit, the one she'd been building towards. Did you know about my background before the adoption?" I considered my answer carefully. She had found fragmented information before. I needed to be truthful now. "I knew you'd been in multiple foster placements," I said, "and that previous adoption attempts hadn't worked out. I was told you had adjustment difficulties due to early trauma, but no, I didn't know the specifics. Those were sealed by the agency." She nodded, absorbing this. "I've been trying to access my early records through legal channels. It's a long process. Dr. Evans thinks understanding exactly what happened in those first 3 years might help me process some of the attachment issues, why I felt like I had to constantly fight or control or push people away before they could leave me." "And have you been successful?" "Partially," she said. "I've learned I was removed from my birth mother at 13 months due to severe neglect. After that, there were 7 foster placements and 3 failed adoption attempts before you." She swallowed hard, tears returning to her eyes. "No wonder I have trust issues." "Sophia," I said gently, my heart aching for that little girl who had been through so much. "Nothing in your early childhood justifies how you treated me, explains, perhaps, some of the root causes, but it doesn't excuse the choices you made as a teenager and young adult." "I know," she said quickly, looking at me earnestly. "That's what Dr. Evans emphasizes. Understanding the origins of my behavior doesn't absolve me of responsibility for it. I still made those choices. I still did those things. I still hurt you." She paused, the difficult truth hanging in the air. "There's something else I need to ask you, and it's going to sound terrible." "Go ahead," I said, bracing myself. Did you ever regret adopting me?" The question emerged barely above a whisper, fragile and full of fear. The honesty of the moment demanded nothing less than complete truth. Sugarcoating it now would undermine everything we were building. "There were moments, Sophia," I admitted softly, "brief moments, during the worst of your manipulation, when I felt completely lost and overwhelmed, when I wondered if I had made a mistake." Her face fell. "Not because of who you were," I quickly clarified, "but because I feared I lacked the skills, the strength, to give you what you needed, to reach you, to help you heal from whatever trauma you carried. I feared I wasn't enough, that I was failing you." She nodded slowly, accepting this difficult truth. It wasn't the easy answer, but it was the real one. "And now?" "Now," I said, looking at the young woman before me, the one who was actively working to understand herself, to heal, to take responsibility. "Now I understand that we've both been on necessary journeys. My enabling wasn't helping you become the person you could be, just as your manipulation wasn't allowing me to become the person I needed to be. We were locked in a destructive pattern, one that perhaps began long before either of us recognized it," she finished for me, echoing my own thoughts. Sophia closed her notebook. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking another deep breath. "There's one more thing I want to tell you." "Okay." "I've been offered a semester abroad at Oxford." My eyes widened slightly. The program? The one you originally hid from me? The one, she confirmed, through State's Honors Program. It's fully funded through a departmental scholarship. Sophia, that's wonderful, I said, genuinely happy for her. When would you go? Next spring. You should absolutely accept, I said firmly. This was the kind of opportunity she deserved, earned through hard work and academic merit, not manipulation. She shook her head slightly. 2 years ago, I wanted Oxford as an escape, a way to reinvent myself where no one knew me. Now, I'm considering it for the actual academic opportunity. But, there's another option too, she continued. Professor Albright has offered me a research assistant position for his book project. It would mean staying at State next spring, not going to Oxford, but potentially getting published as a co-author. Both sound like excellent opportunities, I said, meaning it. The old Sophia would have chosen Oxford immediately for the prestige, for the chance to appear successful to her old circle. The old Sophia would have chosen Oxford for the prestige, she said thoughtfully, as if reading my mind, and maybe even told you I needed your money to afford it, even if it was funded. She paused. I'm trying to make this decision based on what actually serves my growth, my academic path, not my ego, not the need to impress anyone. That's all any of us can do, Sophia, I said softly. Make the best decisions with the understanding we have at the time. Learn from the past, but don't let it define you entirely. We moved to the kitchen after that, the formal atmosphere of the living room no longer necessary. As I prepared a simple lunch, sandwiches and soap, our conversation shifted to lighter topics. Her classes, the challenges of her research project, Ethan's upcoming sabbatical plans, my progress on my new book. Yet underlying the ordinary exchange was a new foundation, one built on mutual respect, tentative trust, and a shared understanding of the difficult journey we'd both been on. Liam wants to know if you and Ethan would join us for dinner next Friday, she mentioned as she helped wash dishes, rinsing plates before loading them into the dishwasher. We'd love to, I replied, smiling. Liam had become a fixture in our lives, a steady, positive influence on Sophia. How's he feeling about the career change? Terrified, she admitted with a small smile, but excited, kind of how I felt switching from pre-law to literature. The casual reference to her own transformation struck me, how naturally she now acknowledged her growth. As she prepared to leave later that afternoon, gathering her things, Sophia paused at the front door. Thank you, she said again, her voice quiet, for listening today.
For not minimizing what I did, but not holding it against me either. That's what healing looks like, Sophia, I said. Not forgetting, but not being defined by the past either. It's a process for both of us. She nodded, then hesitated before asking another question, one that held a depth I hadn't heard from her before. Are you happy, Mom, with your life now? The question, so different from the self-centered queries of her former self, touched me deeply. It wasn't about her. It was about me, a genuine interest in my well-being. Yes, I answered truthfully, smiling. Not in the way I imagined happiness would look at this stage of my life. It's messy, sometimes challenging, but yes, genuinely, deeply happy. Good, she said simply. As I watched her drive away, navigating the familiar streets in her little used car, emotions swirled through me. Relief that the conversation had gone well, pride in the young woman Sophia was becoming, grief for the years of conflict and misunderstanding, and a quiet sense of hope for the future. We would never have the simple, uncomplicated mother-daughter relationship I'd once idealized, but perhaps we had something more valuable, an authentic connection between two imperfect people, committed to understanding, growth, and genuine care. And in the end, wasn't that what family truly meant?
4 years later, the air in the crowded university auditorium buzzed with excitement, a sea of black gowns and hopeful faces. I stood near the front, watching Sophia adjust her graduation cap. At 23, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that came from accomplishment rather than arrogance,
a subtle but profound difference from the girl who had demanded a lavish party. "Stop fussing, Mom," she laughed, swatting gently at my hand as I straightened her honors cords. She was graduating with highest honors in literature. "It's not just anything," I corrected gently, my eyes welling up slightly. "It's the culmination of 4 years of genuine work and growth, yours and mine." Ethan watched our interaction with a fond smile, camera ready to capture the moment. At my side, Liam, now a culinary school graduate and a junior chef at one of the city's upscale restaurants, made final adjustments to the boutonniere he'd insisted on creating for Sophia's graduation gown. A miniature book made of sugar paste, tucked among some tiny literary-themed flowers. "Literature department's most outstanding senior award winner deserves proper floral recognition," he declared, stepping back to admire his handiwork. The announcement at Sophia's departmental honor had come as no surprise to those who had witnessed her transformation. From the calculating pre-law student who saw literature only as a potential minor to boost her applications, she had become a passionate literary scholar. Her senior thesis on economic power dynamics in 19th century women's literature had already been accepted for publication in a respected academic journal. "There's Professor Albright," Sophia noted, waving to the department chair who had become her academic mentor. "He wants me to meet the visiting professor from Columbia before the ceremony starts." As she made her way through the crowd, navigating the academic space with natural ease, not as performance or strategy, but as genuine engagement, I marveled at the distance she had traveled. "Penny for your thoughts," Ethan said, slipping his arm around my waist. "Just reflecting," I replied, "on how far we've come, all of us." My own journey had unfolded alongside Sophia's. The essay collection that had brought unexpected recognition 3 years ago had led to a teaching position at the community college, then a book contract for a new work exploring late-life reinvention. At 62, I had found my voice, not just as a writer, but as an educator, roles I never could have imagined in my former life. Ethan and I had married in a small, joyful ceremony a year ago, blending our lives with the comfortable familiarity of people who had found partnership and deep connection in middle age. The simple gold band on my finger still occasionally surprised me, a symbol of a chapter I had thought permanently closed after Thomas's accident. "Mrs. Carter?" I turned, slightly startled to hear my new name. Chloe Adams stood there, looking different. Her usual veneer of polished arrogance was replaced by an expression that was uncharacteristically hesitant. We hadn't spoken since the literary benefit 3 years earlier. "Miss Adams," I acknowledged, managing a polite surprise. "Are you here for the graduation?" "My cousin is receiving her master's," she explained, gesturing vaguely into the crowd. "I saw you across the room and, well, I wanted to say hello." An awkward silence fell between us. Years of unspoken history, of the sharp words I'd overheard, of the status game she'd played hung in the air. "How is Princeton?" Ethan asked diplomatically, stepping forward slightly. "I actually transferred after sophomore year," she admitted, looking down at her hands. "Princeton wasn't what I expected." The revelation surprised me. The golden path hadn't turned out so golden after all. "I hope you found what you were looking for at NYU." "I did, eventually." She glanced toward where Sophia stood, chatting animatedly with faculty members, truly in her element. "Sophia seems to have thrived here." "She found her path," I agreed, a simple statement of fact. Chloe nodded, something like regret crossing her features. I should have been a better friend to her."
To both of you, really. The simple acknowledgement was unexpected, unprompted. "We all make mistakes in our youth, Miss Adams," I offered, not unkindly. "Some more than others," she said ruefully. She offered a small, genuine smile. "Anyway, I just wanted to say congratulations to Sophia on her graduation and to you on your new book. My mother actually has it on her nightstand." "Thank you, Chloe," I said, using her first name. "That means a lot." After she departed, blending back into the crowd, Ethan squeezed my hand. "That was generous of you." "Life's too short for holding grudges," I replied, "especially when people show genuine change, even small glimpses of it."
The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches, name-calling, and applause. When Sophia crossed the stage to receive her diploma, walking tall and smiling, the pride that swelled in my chest was untainted by calculation or comparison. It was simply joy in her genuine achievement. Afterward, amid the joyful chaos of graduates and families reuniting, she found us with a beaming smile, her diploma clutched in her hand. "Official college graduate," she announced, holding it up like a trophy. "Now I just have to decide between the master's programs." Her academic success, born from choosing passion over prestige, had translated into multiple competitive graduate school offers. A choice she was approaching with thoughtful consideration, evaluating programs based on fit and opportunity, not status seeking. "You'll make the right decision," I assured her, smiling. "You always do, nowadays." "High praise," she teased, nudging me gently, from the woman who once called me pathologically manipulative. The old wound now healed enough for gentle humor. "I never used those exact words," I protested, though I knew the sentiment had been there. "Close enough," she laughed, the sound bright and full of life. Our celebratory dinner that evening brought together the small circle that had become our unconventional chosen family. Ethan and me, Sophia and her boyfriend Sam, a thoughtful history student she had met through the honors program, Liam and his partner David, who had opened a successful little bakery downtown, and Brenda with her new husband Marco, a warm, gregarious musician. As conversation flowed around the table, Liam discussing sourdough starters, Brenda planning a group trip to Italy, Ethan debating historical fiction with Sam, I found myself observing rather than participating, struck by the natural authenticity of our interactions. There was no performance here, no calculated impressions, no strategic posturing, just genuine connection among people who had chosen to be in each other's lives. Later, as dessert plates were cleared, Sophia clinked her glass for attention. "All right, everyone," she said, her expression both nervous and excited. "I have an announcement." All eyes turned to her expectantly. "I've made my decision about graduate school." She took a deep breath. "I've accepted the fellowship at the University of Michigan." A chorus of congratulations erupted around the table. "Their interdisciplinary program in literature and social justice is exactly what I want to pursue," she explained, her eyes shining. "That's wonderful news, Sophia," I said sincerely, even as I calculated the distance in my head. A 4-hour drive. It would take her farther from home than she'd been since starting college. "There's more," she continued, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. We waited. "Part of why I chose Michigan is because they've offered Mom a visiting professorship in their creative writing program for the fall semester." Stunned silence met this revelation. My mouth fell open. They what?" "I might have sent them your collected essays," Sophia admitted, the mischievous smile widening, "and mentioned you were working on a new book. Professor Harrison there was impressed and reached out to the department chair. The official offer should arrive by email tomorrow." "Sophia," I gasped, completely overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, the sheer effort, the unexpected gift. You did this?" "It's entirely on your merit, Mom," she assured me. "Your writing is exceptional." "But what about Ethan?" I stammered, my mind racing through practical considerations. "My class is here. Our life here. My classes are here." "It's just one semester," Ethan interjected smoothly, reaching for my hand under the table. I realized from his calm demeanor, his lack of surprise, that he had been in on the secret all along. "And I've already arranged a sabbatical exchange with their English department for the same period. I'll be teaching a seminar on American Gothic while you're there." The careful coordination, the thoughtfulness required to arrange this opportunity for me, for us, without any hint of manipulation or pressure. It struck me as the clearest evidence of how Sophia had truly come. You did all this?" I asked softly, looking at Sophia, my voice thick with emotion. "For us," she corrected, her voice gentle. "You once gave me the gift of accountability, Mom, when it was the last thing I wanted, but the first thing I needed." Her eyes met mine, full of love and understanding. This is my way of giving you the gift of opportunity, a chance to expand your horizons, just when you might be tempted to settle into comfort. The wisdom in her words and the genuine care behind them brought tears to my eyes. When did you become so insightful? I wondered aloud, smiling through the tears. I had an excellent teacher, she replied simply. Later that night, as Ethan and I prepared for bed, I found myself reflecting on the symmetry of our journey. Where once I had crafted a difficult lesson for Sophia about consequences and independence, she had now created an opportunity for me that demonstrated genuine care, generosity, and a deep understanding of my passions. She's really changed, Ethan observed, reading my thoughts as he often did now. The transformation goes beyond behavior to fundamental character. Yes, I agreed, though I sometimes wonder how much was transformation and how much was revelation of what was always there beneath the defenses, the fear. Perhaps both, he suggested. The best growth usually is. I thought of the frightened 3-year-old I had first met at the adoption agency, wary, withdrawn, already armored against a world that had given her little reason to trust. The calculating teenager she had become, weaponizing charm and manipulation as survival skills. The reflective young woman who had gradually learned to replace strategy with authenticity, control with connection. None of these was the entire Sophia. All were genuine facets of a complex person, shaped by trauma, by choice, by consequence, and ultimately by growth. Just as the anxious, self-sacrificing mother I had been, the boundary-setting parent I had become, and the confident writer and educator I was now, were all authentic expressions of my own evolving self. "What are you thinking?" Ethan asked as we settled into bed. "That life rarely gives us the stories we expect," I replied. "But sometimes, if we're brave enough to face difficult truths, it gives us the stories we need." He smiled, understanding as he always did. "And this story," he said, his voice soft, "has it been worth the painful chapters?" I thought of Sophia's face as she had announced her news tonight, the genuine desire to create opportunity for me, the thoughtful coordination with Ethan, the transformation from taking to giving. How far we had both come from that devastating party where I had overheard her cruel dismissal. "Every page," I assured him, "even the hardest ones, every single page." In the morning, I would find the official offer from Michigan in my inbox. Ethan and I would begin planning our semester away. Sophia would start prepping for her graduate program, for her next chapter. Life would continue its forward motion, bringing new challenges and opportunities. But in this moment, I simply savored the knowledge that sometimes the most painful fractures create space for the most profound healing. That sometimes we must lose the relationships we thought we wanted to discover the authentic connections we truly need. And that it is never, ever too late to begin a new chapter or to rewrite the story of who we might become. Some families are born of blood, others are forged by choice, but those that survive the flames of truth are the ones that truly matter. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.